Welcome to the Seeking Wellness podcast, a journey to discover balance, wholeness, and holistic ways to thrive. I'm your host, Tash from We Are for Wellness, and together we will explore and discover ways to lead a more balanced life, mind, body, and soul. Are you curious about alternative therapies, starting your spiritual journey, or simply looking for practical ways to feel better? You're in the right place. Through inspiring conversations with expert providers and healers, this podcast is here to guide you. Let's explore and seek the path to wellness together. Welcome back, guys, to the podcast. Today, I am joined by Richelle, who is a naturopathic nutritional therapist. Is that correct?
Yes.
I said it right?
Yeah. It's a long word.
To talk about pain and particularly how lifestyle and nutrition can help support pain, which is a really interesting subject. You just said that you have dealt with pain. So that's kind of what brought you here and got you inspired to look into how lifestyle and nutrition can affect us as a whole. So do you want to start by that then? So your journey from the beginning.
Sure. So I have been suffering with, I have hypermobility syndrome. And so for many years, they thought I had arthritis. I do have osteoarthritis in my hips, but they thought I have rheumatoid arthritis. They weren't sure what I had. So I've had spinal surgery. I've had 6 slip discs, carpal tunnel, RSI. I've got dislocation of my knee that happens kind of every few weeks. Golfer's elbow. I had a trampolining accident. So I've had torn ligaments in my back. I mean, I've had issues all over my body. I was on crutches like a few months ago. So it's very common for me to be dealing with an injury or some form of pain at some point in time. And I've been really dealing with that from the age of kind of 15, 16, and I'm now 36. So, really, we're talking 20 years of kind of really quite bad pain. And it really escalated, I'd say, when I slipped my disc. And I was about 23, and the pain really just never really went until I had a surgery, but also I really had to start looking at what I could do myself to support my pain, because I was under physios, acupuncturists, GP, and really it wasn't really getting better. So, I had to kind of take things into my own hands.
That's crazy. You've dealt with a lot there. So that's obviously led you to the path and getting interested in what you do. Is any of that like genetics, or was it all just like lifestyle? What was that? What was all that?
Well, so I actually that is kind of the musculoskeletal side of it, but I also have a digestive. I had a digestive issue, which is Barrett's syndrome, which was causing me also a lot of digestive pain. And I've got polycystic ovaries, so I was also getting a lot of menstrual pain when I was getting periods. And so yes, there are genetic components to some of those. So, like for example, polycystic ovaries is known to have a genetic component. My mum and grandma were never diagnosed, but diagnosis wasn't really as much of a thing in the past. But from the symptoms that they've had, there's a high chance that they did have polycystic ovaries. My hypermobility syndrome, there's no sign of anyone else. No one else has had any conditions like musculoskeletal in the past. So hypermobility, there is meant to be a potential genetic link, but there's nothing in concrete. So one of the things that I have specialized in as a nutritional therapist is that, because I'm also diagnosed neurodivergent. So I'm autistic and ADHD. And what they have found is that there are links between neurodivergence and several other co-conditions. So, for example, digestive issues or hormonal issues. And there is known to be a link with that. And so they're definitely, the fact that you can have often neurodivergence with IBS or IBD or hormonal things like endometriosis or polycystic ovary, yes, there is a genetic link in that. So you do find that you do have these overlaps and that there is a genetic component.
Yeah. What I was thinking when you were saying that is, you've gone through so much, but it's kind of led you to the path, but it's as though that was your destiny, like where you are right now, because you deal with all of these things, like your digestion, menstrual related stuff. So it's kind of like that was your destiny. You needed to go through, that's your path. And it's interesting that you mentioned about autistic ADHD. I've recently not been diagnosed, but I go to a relationship counselling at the moment with my partner, and she brought up the word, I think, autistic. And then I've been looking into it, and me and my partner were like, oh my God, I so am. And then I've done some tests online. It says highly likely you are autistic. I know it's a spectrum, obviously. And then also with ADHD, I can definitely resonate with bits of that. So that's really interesting, because that's only just come to light the last few weeks in my life. Now you've just brought it up. And then I've had hormonal issues, didn't have a period for 2 years. I know with all of that, it can be related to OCD. I had that, had counselling for that, eating disorders, things like that. So it is all very linked, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And the thing with the diagnosis, I was only diagnosed last year. I mean, I've known, to be honest, since a child that I was definitely on the spectrum. I've always been very, very like very overly interested in textures and patterns. And so, and when I heard about masking, which was a couple of years ago, I was like, that's how I got through life.
Yeah.
So I knew that I was like, I'm going to pass these tests. I was like, I knew it. But it's very interesting about the links, and a lot of it is very much coming through in the research now. So yes, they found they completed the genome in 2000. Basically, like, there's a lot of research to show, like, yes, there are genetic components and genetic. So, like, for example, a lot of it with neurodivergence, for example, with their genetic traits. So it's not like, yes, there is a definite genetic uh, passed down, but there are a lot of genetic components. But a lot of it is also epigenetic. It's the environmental factors that impact our genes, things like diet and things like lifestyle, that are known to actually have more of an impact on how those genes are portrayed and expressed, that we have actually such a big impact on, and often are meant to be more of an impact than the genes themselves.
Like turning them on and off, for example, via your lifestyle, etc.
Absolutely. So, like, I have clients who come through who have got neurodivergence, and it's really quite fascinating to see the difference that you can make in regards to how those emotions are expressed, or just, how intense their lack of attention is, by really impacting those nutritional deficiencies, or really impacting on the microbiome of the gut. So you can really have quite a big impact on those epigenetic factors.
That'd be interesting to talk to you about one time then as well. But going back to like pain then. So what are we talking about when we say pain then? So we're talking about physical pain, emotional pain.
Pain is all derived from a form of inflammation. And inflammation, I think a lot of people think that inflammation is going to be really obvious in the body. But, systemic low grade inflammation is occurring all the time. So, all of our body's processes, when we're eating, when we're breathing, our body is having to work with those processes. It's having to kind of, it's like a car, it's running on energy. And our body is naturally producing these free radicals all the time from all our body processes. And that's really normal. But when those free radicals build up, so when our body is not able to combat those free radicals in a balanced way, that's where we can get this increase in inflammation. And that's where, if we see it, even if it's not seen in the body, that's where we can get this kind of low grade systemic inflammation. And that can be in lots of different ways. That could be neurological, and that can be from things like stress. So, if we're talking about the mental impact of inflammation, it can be physical. So, a lot of the time when I was going through my pain for many, many years, every practitioner I saw would say to me, have you been through anything? And I had been through a lot of trauma. And so even though I felt like I was seeing a therapist, and even though I felt like mentally I was doing okay, as a lot of us know, the body keeps a score. And even if we think mentally we're doing okay with the pain from the stress or trauma, our body will still be producing that. And it can be, pain can be from lots of different things, not just stress, not just an injury. Inflammation comes from lots of different things, the things that we put into our bodies. If we're talking about, people might have heard of things like ultra processed foods, but you can also get chemicals, perfumes, the products that we use in our cleaning products, a lot of these have chemicals in them which can build up these free radicals in the body. And so, to be honest, inflammation, and we don't want to be scary about it, but inflammation comes from lots of different avenues, to be honest with you.
Yeah, so it can be, like you said, household products, like your cleaning products that have loads of different chemicals in, they're basically toxic, right? The toxic chemicals, or in perfume. So would that be a thing that people could maybe look at then? I know it's really hard, but like slowly, one by one, that could be contributing to their pain.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's so many. I think a lot of the time people think that, oh, it's just, okay, I'm not eating, I'm not having, I'm being really careful about heavy metals, for example, or, but actually they are really weaved into a lot of different ways. So my first thing to say to people is, organic food, for example, very expensive. I think it's really not realistic to say to someone, just go and buy all organic. That's not realistic. But for example, looking at things like the dirty dozen. So there are certain foods that we know are more built up with pesticides, things like spinach and strawberries. And you can Google dirty dozen, and really trying to aim for these foods to be organic, for example. But yes, absolutely. I mean, I make my own cleaning products, but you can get, the good thing now is on the market, there's some really good ones with no chemicals in, which are actually a really good price point. They're pretty much near to what you would be paying anyway with the ones, and they'll say, no toxins, clean, really. But like even things like makeup, makeup, a lot of the time I was using a brand that was meant to be clean with no chemicals in it, no heavy metals. And then they actually had changed their ingredients without telling anyone. And it was someone actually pointed it out to me, and they said, did you know they've changed? They're now adding mercury, for example, back into their mascara again. And so it's about being vigilant and just, like the UCAT app. I don't know if you've heard of the UCAT app.
No, what's that?
It's a really good app for being
Oh,
able to go and
yeah,
scan and
that's
just
it.
see what is in the products you're using. So you can literally take it with you to Boots and, just have a scan of the back, and it will tell you if it's like, if there are a lot of products you need to be avoiding, or if there's only, if it's quite a clean product. So there's really good things like that can be helpful as well.
Yeah, I have seen a website or heard of a website. I don't know if that's the particular one, but yeah, you scan, it tells you kind of if it how much toxicity it's got in it. Is
Yes,
that the right
yeah,
word?
yeah, because that's the thing. We need to be really reducing everything that we can write down. Um, you know, Tap water is a big one. The water that we have in the UK, it's actually often breaking the regulations. So I do recommend that people do get a filter. And again, you can get ones that aren't that expensive that are attached to your tap. You can obviously buy bottled as well. That can really add up. But it's things like this that we don't see, these things coming into our system that can be really building up this inflammation in the body. And obviously, diet is another one as well.
Yeah. Can you I don't know, is the word manifest pain due to your mind? Is that a thing?
So the more pain we have,
Mm.
the increased sensitivity we have to pain. So this is where you end up in this loop of pain. And the more, it's really difficult, because I remember when I was really going through my pain, I say it now, in the past, because on the whole, I'm generally pain free, to be honest. And when I was really going through my pain, it would be really, really frustrating, because practitioners would say to me, and I don't think they meant it in any harm, but they would say to me, do you feel like, not do you feel like it's in your head, but they would say that in as many words, which is a very, very frustrating thing to hear when you're someone in pain,
Mm.
because you start to think, well, I know this pain is real. I know this pain is real. You're telling me that you don't really see that there's anything there, or you find that you're not able to treat the pain. And the worst thing is when someone's telling you that it's in your head, or that, but it has been proven that our brain the way that we perceive the pain has a big impact on it. And so, absolutely, our brain has a big impact on our perception of the pain, but really it goes much more deep rooted than that, because it's the signals every time the brain and the signal of the pain attaches to a receptor, it increases that sensitivity. And so even if there might not be something technically there, your brain is increasing that sensitivity. Or even if it started off as something really small, it builds up and builds up over time and increases that sensitivity. So there is this building perception of the pain where it might have started really small. So it really, there's so many factors with pain, our diet, our lifestyle, and our perception of it. There's so many factors but absolutely, that's why it's so important that we're able to do things that can change our sensitivity to the pain. And when, I practiced yoga for many, many years, but when I really started to practice mindfulness a lot more, that's when I also started to see this reduction in the pain as well, and where I was able to really change my perception of the pain.
And maybe see yourself as not attached to it, or your identity. Maybe it's a separate thing, possibly.
Absolutely. And I think, being able to, a lot of it is about language as well. How do you see the pain? What's the language you use for the pain? I remember a therapist was, let's label it. Let's label the pain a name. And all of these factors together, really trying to, there's a lot of evidence, as you know, with like mindfulness and deep breathing and meditation, and really trying to take ourselves and detach ourselves from the pain. And absolutely, it's just as important.
Yeah, because that kind of reminds me of giving birth, and then with hypnobirthing, I'm pretty sure it's called, with the breathing, and just imagine it's like, did they say like a mountain or something, like, so it will peak the pain, then it will go down, but you control it with your breath, and yeah, you just think positively, like, this is a good thing, it's blah blah blah. So yeah, I suppose again, perceiving how you perceive it.
Absolutely. I think the difficult thing is when you're in chronic pain, it's very different, because when you're in acute pain, deep down that pain is going to stop at some point. When you're in chronic pain, and for anyone who's listening, it really is like a completely different mindset, because you're having to deal with the fact that that this pain might be forever. I mean, I remember that's what they were saying to me. They were like, you are potentially, not even potentially, that by the end, they were like, you are living with this pain. It's been 10, 15 years. They were like, you are living with this pain. And so really you get to the point where the practitioners are saying to you, you just need to take yourself away from the pain. It becomes very difficult, because you think, how am I going to do this every minute? How am I going to do this every minute of the day for the rest of my life? But there are so many different techniques that you can adopt to be able to detach yourself from the pain while still being present in your day-to-day life, and still being able to live the life you want to lead. Because I remember thinking, how am I going to, I'm a nurse. That's my other job. I'm a nutritional therapist, but I am actually a practicing nurse, and at the time I was in intensive care, one-on-one nursing, very intense. So how am I going to detach myself from the pain while still being present in my job? But actually, there are lots of somatic exercises, tapping. There's so many ways that you can detach yourself, but in a really present and mindful way.
That's really interesting. It must be so difficult, like you said, if it is a constant chronic pain. I've never been through that, but I can only imagine it's horrific and so hard. Like you said, it's constant, isn't it? So yeah, they sound great if there's ways and somatic practices that can help. Talking about like food and nutrition, what are some of the big ones then? You said about dirty dozen that potentially increase inflammation, which therefore increases pain.
Yeah, I mean, you've got the well-known inflammatory foods. Gluten is a big one. So gluten is, and I don't tell everyone that they should be off gluten, but if someone is going through an inflammatory condition, gluten is a big one, because gluten, it pokes holes in the gut, and it opens up those spaces, and it allows more space in the gut for basically large undigested foods and toxins just generally to make their way into the bloodstream. And when they make their way into the bloodstream, they can be then detected as inflammatory. They're like foreign foreign, basically, molecules. And so gluten, if we can take gluten out of the diet, close up that gap, that can be really helpful. And there's other things that can be really helpful in terms of closing that, supporting that nice gut, those keeping the gut nice and healed, things like bone broths, anything with glutamine to really help to keep that gut lining nice and kind of together. Dairy is another inflammatory food. Again, there is a time and place for dairy, but it also is inflammatory. The thing with dairy is that they pump dairy with a lot of hormones and toxins. And yes, you can get raw organic dairy. That would be, but if someone is dealing with an inflammatory condition, I do tell them to come off dairy at least for a period of time. But also, really trying to flood the body with anti-inflammatory foods. So if we're thinking like omegas, so omega-3s are highly anti-inflammatory. They really help to create that reduction in inflammation. They help with kind of hormonal regulation. They help support the gut lining and cell lining. So they really help in numerous different ways with pain. So really trying to get like 2 to 3 portions of oily fish a week in the diet. But also you really want to be getting those omega-3s into the diet, because if you have an imbalance of omega-3 to omega-6, so omega-6 is things like nuts and seeds, very healthy, but actually they're full of omega-6s. And if you have too many omega-6s in comparison to omega-3s, that also leads to an inflammatory state. I remember having a client who was having loads of nuts and seeds, and he was like, I have a really healthy diet. And I was like, I looked at how many omega-6s they were having in the diet, nuts, seeds, but also loads of kind of inflammatory oils, the oils that we cook with. These can be higher in omega-6s. When we looked at that imbalance and really took down the omega-6s and pushed the omega-3s, really saw a massive impact in the pain. And I touched on before about, those free radicals, really encouraging inflammation and pain. We need the antioxidants to combat. So really, we need to support flooding the body with antioxidants. So this is fruit, vegetables, but a wide variety, like a wide rainbow of the fruit and veg. We really, those rainbow, they all provide a different compound that fights inflammation. For me personally, I thought I was having a good amount of fruit and veg in the diet. I was like, oh yeah, I'm really good at this. But the evidence has shown that the NHS say you need 5 portions of fruit and veg a day. You need more like 10 to 12.
Really?
Yes. And our soils, especially in the UK, are depleted of nutrients. So I personally take a very high quality capsule that has 30 varieties of fruit and veg a day. It also has like a very gentle detoxer in there as well. That for me has made a massive impact. And so, if anyone wants to know about any of these things, they can reach out to me. But it's important to be mindful that even if you think that you are getting a good amount of fruit and veg a day, we actually need a lot more than what we think. And we need it in a much higher quality than often what we're getting.
That's interesting, because I'm looking at my diet thinking, oh, it's blooming awful. Like veg and fruit, and well, I'm addicted to peanut butter. I'm assuming that's omega-6.
Exactly.
Oh, literally,
Exactly.
I can't stop eating so much of that. I put it in like everything. I absolutely adore it. But then, so omega-3s would be fish.
Walnuts,
Yeah.
chia.
Oh, okay.
They're like, you can get some in eggs. You need to look at the eggs. You need to look at, it will say on there if they are an omega-3 rich egg. So sometimes I'll use them in a client's diet if there's someone who doesn't, but also algae. So if someone is vegan and they want to get, they're struggling to get omega-3s into the diet, I will go for a really good quality algae based omega-3 as well. And
what is that?
Algae.
Yeah, so what, like, I'm thinking of like pond water here.
Basically, but algae absorbs all the omega-3s from the fish. Basically, it's like the
Right.
middleman, so you can actually, it's really high quality. When people take an omega-3 supplement and it's from fish oil, that's
Mm.
absolutely fine. But what you have to be mindful of, especially with the one that you're getting, is that you don't want any heavy metals. This is one of the things when people take oily fish. So when you're eating oily fish, you need to aim really for the smaller oily fish, things like mackerel, anchovies, salmon, because they have a lower load of heavy metals, lower
Mm.
amount of mercury, for example. And so when you're taking a capsule, a supplement, people take an oily fish omega-3, which is absolutely fine. But actually, if you can take one with algae, you're getting the omega-3s without having to worry about the buildup of the heavy metals.
Mm.
And the one that I take it's like grown in a really not organized, that's not the word, but like controlled area, so they know exactly what's going into it. It's really highly tested for heavy metals, so I know that what I'm getting in my body is like really low in heavy metals and toxicity and in inflammation.
That's interesting. Okay. And what about lifestyle then? So lifestyle and pain, what's the link there? I'm assuming like sleep, stress management, and things like this.
Absolutely. So inflammation is very linked to our circadian rhythm. So, for example, if someone says to me that I'm finding that my pain is worse in the morning, this could be arthritis, this could be carpal tunnel, anything, I know that there is a buildup of inflammation in their body because our inflammation rises in the morning. It moves with our circadian rhythm, it moves with our cortisol pattern.
Mm.
And so absolutely, people need to be getting enough sleep. You need to be getting really 7 to 9 hours. The other thing also, though, is I've mentioned about circadian rhythm. It's about really trying to get sleep at the right time. So if you're someone who is getting sleep in the daytime, you're not matching with the natural circadian rhythm that we should be getting. Our body should be sleeping when it's dark and awake when it's light. And so obviously there are people who are shift workers, for example. It's not easy for them, right? I used to be a shift worker. I used to have to sleep in the daytime. This has a big knock-on effect as well on our inflammation because we're going against that circadian rhythm. So there are ways of really supporting that. Like, for example, if you're having to sleep in the daytime, making sure that you have got black out blinds, black out mask, but also, waking up, you can wake up to a specific light. It's like
Mm.
a light that really helps to boost your melatonin when you will boost your cortisol when you wake up and really helps to like reset your circadian rhythm. So there
Mm.
are ways of really supporting that, which will have a knock-on effect with the pain. And I always recommend to people that they are doing some form of not just, it doesn't have to be yoga, but some form of mindful movement, whether that's Tai Chi, yoga. I personally love yin yoga. It's a really great way of supporting the fascia and the ligaments and the tendons, which are often impacted with pain. If you're really struggling with back pain, with shoulder pain, I used to find people go, oh, just do yoga. And I'd be like, that for me is not helpful because especially when it's like a constant moving, it
Mm.
really aggravate my pain. Whereas yin yoga for me, and that's why I say to people, look at what works for you. If you're someone who's never done yoga before, there are lots of different ways that you can support your pain. Breath work is fantastic. And so absolutely trying to find something that takes your mind and detaches it away. I personally, I grown up dancing. I actually do my self dance meditation. I'm going to start actually taking classes in this and leading because there's lots of ways of detaching yourself from pain. It doesn't have to be just sitting there and being still.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. So, and dance meditations, what does that look like? Slow, fast, doesn't matter. You're
I
feeling the
used to,
movement.
I've been in sessions where I've done, I don't know if you've heard of it, but like Sufism, where you're like, you do whirling. So if you Google the whirling dervishes, it's a kind of mystical part of Islam. A lot of it is linked basically to how you can use mindful movement to dance yourself into a trance. And I would
Mm.
spin on the spot for 4 or 5 hours.
Oh my Lord.
while there's music going on. And it's an incredible, it sounds like really intense. You starve really slow, but you can, it's a really, that's one way of doing it. But there's also, like, I'm part of like a practice of called like mana meditation, which is like mindful movement. But it's about, being able to just move your body. A lot of it is about shaking out the energy. A lot of our pent up pain and energy is because we're so stiff, and we're so in, and that is because we're in pain. But if we can really try and move that pain out and shift the energy every day, I recommend finding a time, 5 minutes, just to like dance it out, even if you're sitting in a chair, even if it's just your arms, really trying to kind of relax with it.
So going from that, what could people do maybe every day that are like small little changes? So I'm assuming, like you just said, shake it out could be a small little change every day.
Yeah, but for me, something that really helped for me is a Shakti mat. I do tell everyone to try it. It's £10. It's not expensive, and for me, when I was really in pain, this really helped me. It's basically it's like a self acupressure mat. So it's a mat with points coming up. Now, a lot of people when they first try it, it's quite intense. You might only be able to do it for like 10 seconds, but you can build up. I think I personally was doing 20 minutes a day. You have to lie on it naked, and it's quite painful, but there's different ways it works. One is that acupuncture is known to stimulate circulation in the body, but also for me, I think it's the distraction of the fact that you're changing how your brain is perceiving the pain. For me, 10 minutes of a Shakti mat or every day is, I think, a really good way of putting something in the practice that you don't even need to do. And because you're lying down naked on your mat, you can't be scrolling on your phone.
Mhm.
It's a really good way to take your mind out of everything for even just 10 minutes.
Yeah, I like that. I've never heard of that as well. So that's really
They do it
interesting.
as a mat and they do it as a pillow. And like, even when I'm traveling, I take it with me
What, for just all of it, the pillow?
everywhere. I either
Yeah.
take the mat or I take the pillow. I take one of them with me because at least I know that I've got something if I get inflamed, if I get triggered. Because I still get bad
Mm.
if I'm like sitting in a car for too long, something like that. I still struggle. So, but like I spent the weekend doing salsa dancing for 7 hours. My first festival after since I was 23. So it's like, even if you are in chronic pain, that you can get to a point where, I started off by just belly dancing. Belly dancing was a great way for me to be able to very, very gently move my body again. So all I would say is to people who, if you are struggling in pain, there are things that you can do. I honestly felt hopeless for years. There are things that can be done.
Yeah, that's so inspiring. Did you have a really good time?
Oh my God, I had an amazing time. Dancing for me is that's why it's meditation. It's an amazing way to take your mind away from the
Mm.
pain for a bit. So yeah, it was amazing to be able to salsa dance again for 7. I haven't done that since I was 23. Long like day festivals. Yeah, it's good.
Would you say that you have resolved your pain or you manage pain? What do people manage pain forever or do they resolve the pain?
Depends on the condition. I
Mm.
mean, I had a spinal surgery, which helped resolve some of it. I still have 6 slip discs. It's just that 2 of them now are not pushing on my spinal cord. So it's a constant management of pain. I'm just not managing it in the same way. So, like, I
Mm.
still have 6 slip discs. I still have there's still arthritis in my hip. I've seen that on the scan, but I manage it. I manage it with my diet. I manage it with my lifestyle. I know that things can inflame and can get worse. So again, and like we touched on with the fact that it's how our brain perceives the pain. So that perception can change. We can
Mm.
change how we perceive the pain. And so yeah, I would say to everyone, if someone is telling you, maybe it's how you're seeing the pain, try not to get frustrated by that. They're meaning it, and I think in a nice way, but it is about how we perceive it, and that there are things that we can do to manage it,
Mm.
definitely.
And then I was supposed to be kind to yourself as well because life happens and stress happens, and therefore that might inflame your pain. But it's how you see the stress, but you can't control it. And yeah, so you've also got to be kind with yourself.
Absolutely. People get really, oh God, I ate some dairy, I ate some gluten. Look, we're not perfect.
Mm.
It's going to happen. And also, like, especially like dairy, it gets fed into so many foods. Like I honestly have it all the time. People say, I ate this the other day, and I go, look at the back. And it's often fueled, and especially like things like vegetable oils, these omega 6s, they are really put into so many different foods. And look, we can't be all the time constantly stressed about what we're eating to the point it's making us more stressed, right? It's a cycle. So we have to be kind to ourselves. We have to do the best we can, and we have to just accept that these things are in our environment, and we just have to be mindful. And like you mentioned at the beginning, doing one extra thing, and just taking it step by step. Okay, I'm going to look at my products. Okay, now I can look at my diet, and just be kind to yourself. Absolutely.
What would you, just got one little question, what would you use or recommend people to use for cooking? Well, that's
So,
quite putting you on the spot.
either avocado oil or coconut oil, depending on what you're cooking. Personally, I like to use coconut oil when I'm cooking things like dals and curries because of the flavor. Whereas if I'm looking for like that less coconutty flavor, avocado oil.
Perfect.
And again, it really depends if you're kind of putting it in a oven, which one's got up, but they've both got a very similar kind of smoke point. So I'd go for those two. They're less
Cool.
inflammatory. They're the ones you want to be going for. As long as you're staying away from sunflower oil, you don't want to be cooking with sunflower oil and vegetable oil at high temperatures, because it is highly inflammatory. So I mean, we could talk about this forever, but things like avocado oil and coconut oil, when you heat them, they don't release, they've got a much higher smoke point, so they're less inflammatory. They're fine at higher temperatures.
Okay. And I always ask the people that I'm having a little chat with if they can provide a homework task or a question to pose to the listeners that maybe kind of deepens their journey of what we've just discussed about, or I don't know, just kind of they can listen and pause and think about what we've just discussed, if that makes any sense. I'm kind of putting you on the spot because I don't know if I've actually told you that. Because normally I tell people, but I think I forgot, because this has been a long time coming, hasn't it? We've been months ago, we was meant to have a podcast episode, and then things happen again. So like a little question or a homework task you can think of that might help the listeners.
I would just say, you could download the Yuka app. And one thing I would say is just have a look around your pantry, have a look around your cupboard, and just see, how many foods in here potentially are inflammatory, because really it often can be quite a lot. So I just say, have a look around your pantry, have just a mindful look, and just see, how much gluten have I got in my diet? How much dairy have I got in my diet? Just to have a look and just see, where can you think about where you might be having those inflammatory foods in comparison to those anti-inflammatory foods, just to really have a kind of general, and not to look at yourself with any judgment, but just with curiosity, just to see where maybe you could take one out, and maybe you could add some more fruit and veg in, maybe add some more colors in.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time. It's been really informative. Richelle is on We Offer Wellness as well, so you can find her on there. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. Learned so much. You're always so knowledgeable, because we've had you in for other stuff about digestion and things like that with We Offer Wellness. So yeah, thank you so much for your time. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. Visit weofferwellness.co.uk to find lots of wellness experiences, along with more resources to help you on your wellness journey.